On August 6, 2025, President Donald Trump unveiled a sweeping new trade deal with Japan, marking one of the most significant shifts in U.S.-Asia economic relations in recent years. The announcement, made at a high-profile White House press conference, sent immediate shockwaves through global markets and set the stage for a new era in international trade policy. The deal's centerpiece is a dramatic change to the auto industry, shaking the global sector to its core. Automakers, suppliers, and workers around the world are bracing for the impact, as the agreement promises to reshape how cars are built, sold, and shipped between the two nations. Under the new terms, the previously threatened 27.5% tariff on Japanese cars is slashed to 15%. While this is a significant reduction from the initial threat, it still represents a major hike from the much lower rates that existed before, raising concerns about higher prices for consumers and potential disruptions in the market. In return for these concessions, Japan has agreed to invest a staggering $550 billion in U.S. supply chains, a move designed to strengthen economic ties and create new opportunities for American businesses. The deal also includes a commitment from Japan to purchase 100 Boeing jets, providing a major boost to the U.S. aerospace industry. Additionally, Japan will increase its defense spending with U.S. firms, signaling a deepening of military and strategic cooperation between the two allies at a time of growing global uncertainty. The agreement also opens the door for $8 billion in American agricultural exports, offering a lifeline to U.S. farmers who have faced years of trade tensions and market instability. For President Trump, this deal is a signature achievement and a centerpiece of his economic agenda. It's aimed squarely at protecting U.S. industries, preserving American jobs, and reasserting the country's influence in global trade. Supporters hail the agreement as a win for American manufacturing and a bold step toward fairer trade. However, critics argue that the complex new tariff structure could backfire, leading to unintended consequences for both economies. Industry experts remain deeply divided. Some believe the deal will revitalize U.S. factories and create new jobs, while others warn it could drive up costs for car makers and consumers, and even spark retaliation from other trading partners. The details are complex, and the stakes could not be higher for both countries. Every clause and commitment will be closely scrutinized in the months ahead. As the dust settles, the world is watching closely to see if this bold move will truly pay off, or if it will spark new challenges in the ever-evolving landscape of global trade. To really understand the impact of this deal, let's break down tariffs and see how they work in the real world. Trade taxes or tariffs are a key part of international business, and they can have ripple effects far beyond just the price tag on a product. A tariff is essentially a tax on imported goods. Think of it as a fee that companies must pay to bring products into the country. This fee is usually paid at the border, and it's often passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. Tariffs can serve as a shield for local industries by making foreign goods more expensive, nudging consumers to buy domestic products instead. This can help protect jobs and businesses at home, but it can also mean less choice and higher prices for shoppers. For example, if a Japanese car costs $20,000 to make, a 15% tariff adds $3,000, raising the showroom price to $23,000. That extra cost can make a big difference for families deciding which car to buy, and it can even influence which models are available in the U.S. High tariffs can force companies to rethink selling in the U.S., or even pull out of the market entirely. On the other hand, lower tariffs make it easier and more attractive for foreign companies to do business here, which can increase competition and potentially lower prices for consumers. The Trump administration used the threat of steep tariffs as a bargaining chip, pressuring Japan to come to the negotiating table and agree to new terms. This kind of strategy can reshape entire industries and change the balance of trade between countries. Dropping the rate from 27.5% to 15% is a major shift for Japanese automakers like Toyota and Honda. It means they can sell cars in the U.S. at more competitive prices, which could boost their sales and market share. This single percentage change can move billions in investment, affect thousands of jobs, and shape what cars Americans can buy, and at what price. It also impacts suppliers, dealerships, and even the communities where these companies operate. Tariffs aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, they're powerful levers that can reshape entire industries, influence global supply chains, and determine which products end up on store shelves. The New Deal's tariff is now the pivot point for the future of the U.S. auto market. It will affect not just car prices but also innovation, investment, and the choices available to American drivers. Every automaker is recalculating their next move, analyzing how these changes will impact their business, their workers, and their customers for years to come. The New Deal creates a paradox for car makers. While it was designed to protect American jobs and boost domestic manufacturing, the reality is far more complicated and, for many, deeply frustrating. Japanese cars now face a 15% tariff when entering the US market, a move intended to level the playing field for American automakers. But at the same time, US manufacturers are still required to pay a hefty 25% tariff on imported parts, components that are essential for building modern vehicles, and it doesn't stop there. Raw materials like steel and aluminum, which are the backbone of car manufacturing, are now taxed at a staggering 50%. These costs ripple through the entire supply chain. The result? It's now actually cheaper for Japanese firms to build cars in their own factories and ship them across the Pacific, rather than set up shop in the US or source American-made parts. Meanwhile, American companies assembling cars domestically are forced to rely on global parts, which are now much more expensive due to the tariffs. Ford and GM, for example, are hit with high costs for every imported gearbox, electronic component, or specialized part that isn't made in the US, and many simply aren't. The American Automotive Policy Council, which represents the big three automakers, has called the deal a blow to US industry, warning that it could undermine the very companies it was meant to help. They argue that these new tariffs raise costs for domestic producers at every step, from raw materials to finished vehicles. At the same time, Japanese imports, despite the new tariffs, still enjoy a relative edge, since their supply chains remain more streamlined and less affected by the patchwork of US tariffs. The impact is already showing up in the numbers. Ford reported an $800 million loss in the second quarter of 2025, directly blaming the spike in tariffs on parts and materials for their financial troubles. The company now expects to face $2 billion in extra costs this year alone, a burden that could force tough decisions on jobs, investment, and future production. Instead of boosting US manufacturing, the policy may be making it harder for American car makers to compete. The result? Higher prices for consumers, squeezed profits for companies, and growing frustration in Detroit, where workers and executives alike are feeling the pressure. The intended fix for American industry may be causing more harm than good, threatening jobs and the future of US auto manufacturing. As the industry faces mounting uncertainty, car makers are left searching for answers and hoping for a policy shift that will restore balance and competitiveness. Japanese giants like Toyota and Honda are rethinking their US manufacturing strategy. For years, they built factories in states like Ohio and Kentucky to avoid tariffs and create American jobs. Now, with a 15% tariff on finished cars but steep tariffs on parts, it may be cheaper to build in Japan and pay the import tax. The deal could slow or reverse Japanese investment in US plants, threatening jobs and local economies. While immediate factory closures are unlikely, future expansions are on hold. The ripple effects could be felt across communities that depend on these factories. The US-Japan trade deal has sparked outrage among American automakers and workers. GM, Ford, and Stellantis say the policy forces them to absorb higher costs, while Japanese rivals get a better deal on finished cars. Unions warn the structure could lead to job losses, not gains, as companies may cut US production. The very workers the policy aimed to protect now face uncertainty. In Japan, the mood is cautiously optimistic. Business leaders welcome the clarity and relief from the threat of even higher tariffs. Japanese automakers aren't celebrating, but they're relieved to avoid a trade war. The deal brings stability, but at a price. Both sides are adjusting to a new, more expensive reality. Markets reacted instantly to the trade deal. In Tokyo, the Nikkei soared to a one-year high, with Toyota and Honda stocks jumping double digits. Investors saw the 15% tariff as manageable, and the threat of a trade war was lifted. On Wall Street, the Dow rose as investors welcomed reduced global tensions. But beneath the surface, US auto stocks struggled, reflecting worries about higher costs and shrinking profits. Relief was widespread, but anxiety lingered for American carmakers. The market's message: Japan wins stability, America faces tough questions. The financial world is watching what happens next. For American car buyers, expect higher prices on both Japanese imports and US brands. With costs rising across the board, consumers may delay purchases or turn to used cars. The era of cheap, globally sourced vehicles may be ending. For workers, the outlook is uncertain. Japanese firms may slow U.S. investment, and American automakers could cut jobs to offset costs. The policy meant to protect jobs may end up putting them at risk. The next few months will reveal whether companies double down in the U.S. or shift production abroad. One thing is clear: the road ahead for the auto industry and its workers will be anything but smooth.